Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the Thursday, December 19th full board meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3, invocation by Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we can bow our heads. Lord, please guide over this board as we make decisions on behalf of the residents of Macomb County. And let us not forget during this holiday season the men and women who are serving in the military and protecting this great country, to keep them in our thoughts and prayers. In your name, Lord Jesus Christ, amen.
Item number 4, adoption of the agenda as amended to add 7G for the CBA for the TPOAM. Have a motion for that? Sure. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Commissioner Hall, supported by Commissioner Kraft. Please vote.
The motion passes 11-1 with Commissioner Duge voting no.
Item number 5, approval of the minutes dated December 12th, 2019. Could I have a motion? Commissioner Lucido, supported by Commissioner Myjack. Please vote.
The motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. Item number 6, public participation. Any members of the public wishing to speak, you have 5 minutes related to items on the agenda. Any members of the public, please come up, give us your name and address, and welcome.
My name is Kristen Seeloff. I'm the Equalization Director for the county. I live at 52731 Fenton in Clinton Township. So good afternoon. I'm here to address the $44,600 reduction to the 2020 proposed budget for the Equalization Department. This amount, if approved, will be devastating to our department operations. As you all know, the Equalization Department exists according to Section 211.34 of the General Property Tax Act, and we are here to perform the function of equalization, a responsibility which rests upon all of you. There are 10 of us in the Equalization Department, 3 certified assessing technicians who process 20,000 deeds per year, 4 certified and advanced assessing officers who perform the property appraisals and sales verifications to complete statutory study requirements, 2 managers, 1 who oversees everything to do with personal property reviews and audits, and 1 who oversees everything to do with real property, basically managing the entire workload of the technicians and the appraisers. And then there's me, who you guys see a couple times a year. It's my job to compile all of the work of those 9 individuals into tabular reports for you, as well as the people in Lansing. The impact of the work performed by my department touches every single taxing authority within the county, every local unit, every school district, every library, every public service with a millage rate and a tax levy to fund it. To do this work, we are required by the state of Michigan to hold specific certifications to meet specific hours of annual education. Everything we do is prescribed within the law on what must be done, the process in order to do it, and the deadline to complete it. We do this with a net operating budget of $27,300, exclusive of associated personnel costs. So what has changed? Why did our 2020 budget increase by such an exponential rate when compared to other departments? It's because our appraisers have finally been made whole through the results of the wage study. These 4 positions have been significantly underpaid for years, around 20% below market, one of the lowest of all the positions reviewed in the study. And through the efforts of the various county administrators, their wages have finally been brought up to market and have been included in the 2020 budget. For the first time since I've been here, Macomb County has a competitive wage to offer when the need to recruit new talent arises. But now we're faced with a $44,600 reduction to the proposed 2020 budget, and I'm trying to find an area where we can reduce. Even if we cut every operating expense, every expense dollar from our budget, meaning no typical supplies, no mileage reimbursement because we do use our own vehicles to do these required appraisals, and we aren't supplied a county vehicle. No compensation for attending statutorily required education and training. Even if I cut all of that, every dollar, I still wouldn't be able to meet the amount you're asking me to cut. That leaves us only one other option, a staff reduction. We currently run very lean at 36,000 parcels per full-time employee when compared to the metrics of other counties similar in size, such as Oakland at 15,000 parcels per full-time employee, and Kent County at 24,000 parcels per full-time employee. Our operating budget equates to around $2,700 per employee to get all of our work done, according to the law. I have said this many times to anybody who will listen. I've said it here. I have the best employees in the state, and they work very hard for all of you and the taxpayers of this county. Four of them have been doing so for years at a wage much lower than market. A $44,600 reduction means that one of my employees will have to be laid off in order to implement the indicated wage increases for the others. I truly do not believe that that was the intended outcome of that study. Today, I'm respectfully asking that you reconsider the reduction amount of the Equalization Department's 2020 budget and that you allow those wage increases that were granted through negotiations in good faith without the expense of having to lose someone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members of the public wishing to speak? Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close public participation. Move to item number 7, Government Oversight Committee recommendations that were waived by the committee chair. 7A, Collective Bargaining Agreement. Andrew McKinnon. Hello, Andrew. We had a motion to recommend to the full board to approve the Administrative and Technical Employees Association Collective Bargaining Agreement effective January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2022. Commissioner Carabelli, supported by Commissioner Sauger. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Commissioner Smith. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen of the board, for having me today. This agreement, as with most of our agreements, as with all of our agreements so far, falls within the parameters that we had set forth for our negotiations this time around. The individual employees on the TPA schedule will be getting a 2% increase in 2020, 2021, and 2022. The individuals who are not yet on that TPA schedule will be getting a $1,000 lump sum paid in the second pay in January in 2020, 2021, and 2022 until they become PTA eligible. This was budgeted for in our proposed budget, and we would respectfully request ratification of this agreement.
I don't see any speakers on this. I have a motion on the table. Unless I'm missing something, please vote. Oh, Commissioner.
I was just going to make a motion to support 7A through 7D. We have to do these individually?
Well, let's do the, what's that? Let's do this one, and then we'll move on,
Okay.
and we'll do B through G because we added G.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay? So please vote.
The motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. Then I'm going to need a motion for, I'll take a motion through from B to G if anyone wants to make that, and Andy can talk to them all. There you go. Commissioner Majek?
2 of them are older adults. They need B, C,
Oh,
G. You know, you need to skip 2.
tell me which ones, Crystal.
I know, they got out of order because we got.
Sorry.
So we'll skip E and F,
Okay.
the older.
Yeah, skip E and F, yeah. Or just,
Okay.
yeah, E and F, those are, yeah.
So I'll make the motion B, C, D, and G,
G.
which is collective bargaining agreements.
Thank you.
Support.
Support by Carabelli. You're up again.
Thank you, Commissioner. Would you be able to tell me what G is? I don't have G on my agenda.
G is the TPOAM.
TPOAM, specialized employees?
Crystal? Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I'm usually pretty quick on these, and I will be on this one as well, but I did want to recognize 2 people in the audience, if I may, and if that's appropriate. Tony Migliotti is here. He is the president of the Road Tech Negotiation, the Road Tech Union. That is the roads employees who are the laborers, truck drivers, equipment operators, electricians, and so forth. We had a great opportunity to sit with Tony, get to create a relationship with Tony, and I'm super happy that he's the president over there. He's done a great job so far, and we look forward to working with him in the future. A very special guest of Tony's is his daughter, Caitlin Migliorati. She is a former student council representative in 3rd grade at her elementary school, and she is very interested in politics and how things work here in Macomb County. So I want to make sure to recognize both Tony and Caitlin, who are here in the back of the room. If you don't mind standing up. It's also a representation of the people that we are able to support here in the county of Macomb. I am so happy to work with great people like Tony, like the people that are in his unit. They do incredibly difficult work daily, and we're fortunate to have people like him on our staff. Each of these collective bargaining agreements, C, D, and G fall within the guidelines that we've been discussing, 2% for 2021 and 22. B, the Command Officers Association of Michigan is constructed a little bit differently. Oftentimes you hear us say that we enter into some slight modifications with our command officers, our deputies and dispatchers, and our captains over at the Sheriff's Department because they are 312 eligible. And in order for us to come to an agreement and not have an arbitrator force an agreement upon us, we sometimes make some minor modifications. Those minor modifications add up to about another % of money out of pocket in 2021. Also, that agreement is only for 20 and 21. We want to recognize those public safety officers, and we're going to negotiate them with them in a year that is not a general year that we're negotiating, so we can really focus on them and make sure that we're giving them the respect, understanding, and time that we need to go through a 312 process if we have to. With that, I would respectfully request that you approve items B, C, D, and G, I believe.
Thank you. I don't see any speakers on the list, so unless I'm missing anything, please vote.
The motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Item 7E, the Older Adult Advisory Committee, in a motion to recommend all the members of the advisory committee listed. Commissioner Brown, Commissioner Sauger. I don't have any speakers on this, so please vote. Here, I'll let you go. Actually, talk.
The motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. Item number 7F, Older Adult Advisory Committee Term Report. Need a motion to receive and file. Commissioner Drolet, supported by Commissioner Kraft. Patty, if you'd like to give the highlights of that, that would be great.
I sure would.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to just let you know that all of our members of the Older Adult Advisory Committee are engaged, active. You can see by the summary that I have in your packet that they've done a lot of things, some of which you have heard of because they've made recommendations to this board, which have been adopted, and other things they have taken on as their own projects. They are becoming an influencing group. AAA1B approached them to help with a couple of their outreach projects, and the Attorney General's office also contacted us to have them receive some information. So it's a good group, it's very active, it's purposeful, they're doing things, and if there are any questions about the report, I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't have any speakers up. Anybody I'm missing? Nope. Oh, Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Patty, please convey our thanks for the work that the group has done and continues to do. Thank you for introducing me to my representative who has contacted me, and I appreciate all the work that the group is taking place. Thank you.
Thank you. I do as well.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, we have a motion on the floor. Please vote.
The motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. Item 8A, memo from the county executive dated 12/17/2019, which is a veto of enrolled ordinance 2019-04. Need a motion to receive and file? You making that motion? It's receive and file for the veto. Carabelli, supported by Commissioner Drolet. We'll have a chance to discuss this more on the next item, so if I don't have any other speakers, we'll vote. Please vote.
The motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. And then item 8B, budget amendment for general fund FY 2020 from the county executive's office. I need a motion to receive and file that as well. Commissioner Sauger, supported by Commissioner Doucet. Please vote.
No. The motion passes 12-0.
All right. Item number 9, 2020 budget discussion. The first thing we should do is discuss the veto. And the first item, I think, would be to discuss whether we are going to take an override vote. So if anybody's planning on doing that, I'll take a motion for that.
So moved.
Commissioner Carabelli, supported by Commissioner Leonetti. One of you with a lot of ayes here. So if you'd like me to explain, when we passed our budget a few weeks back, the executive had 10 business days in which to veto the budget. That happened 2 days ago, and then the commission has 30 days in which to vote to override the veto. So that's where we're at today, since this is our scheduled full board, our scheduled meeting, the only one, at least this year. We could do this next year, and it would just be a continuation of the budget going on right now. But we have a motion to vote to override that, which would then, at least temporarily, or at that time, put our approved budget back in place, or keep it in place. And then Commissioner Kleinfeld.
I just wanted to, adding on to that, I don't know what's going to happen up here. I know different people have different ideas, but what's been explained to me is if we don't override, we don't revert back to the original one to deal with. We just don't have anything to deal with. So that's been explained to me as sort of a
Do you want to hear a quick from?
So I just wanted
I
people
think
to
you're
understand
right
that.
on with that. And that's, in order to have any type of amendments to this current budget that we just passed, we would have to technically override it and then amend it.
Right, and I just
that's-
wanted that to be clear because there may be amendments and people might not have known that if we just quickly voted on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hall?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. You started to defer to legal counsel to explain what our options are, and I know he's met individually with some of us, but we all should probably hear, and I appreciate your explanation as well. And if I'm hearing correctly, we need to have the override to make any amendments to the budget, even up to and accepting the, what are we calling it, 8A budget at that time. Is that correct?
8B is his recommended, the amendment that was recommended from the executive. It would be 8B,
It
but
would
yes,
be 8B.
correct.
Okay.
In order to even address that tonight as an option, the veto would have, or the override would have to take place. Otherwise, we would be basically starting from scratch with a brand-new plan, which can be done, but it's not
Yeah.
something that can be done in any timely fashion.
Not only not in a timely fashion, I wanted to indicate we have spent since, well, Crystal's probably been working on this all year. The rest of us, as a committee, got together in October at your request, Chairman, and we honored that request and put together a committee to adopt a resolution to send to the executive's office. So that was accomplished. We had 3 goals in there: expenditures not to exceed revenue, amongst others, place funds in the unappropriated fund, and try to work on a bipartisanship budget. Now, we can sit here all day and talk about how that didn't happen, who didn't do what. The reality is, and we have a article in front of us that said unintended consequences took place, not just in equalization, and I want to thank her for presenting her case today, but in the treasurer's office, the clerk's office, the OEC office, the animal control, I see he's sitting back there as well. So there was a lot of unintended consequences that have taken place that we have, as well as possible layoffs to county employees. We have an opportunity to fix that today, and I, for one, will support the veto override. But I want to thank you for putting that group together that put that resolution out, because it was an attempt to prevent exactly where we are today. So thank you for that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other commissioners wish to speak? I don't have anybody on the list. All right. We have a motion out for a veto override. That motion takes a 2/3 of the board members sitting to actually pass. So please vote.
The motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. So at this moment, the budget that we passed a few weeks ago is intact. I know that there's been some discussion that if this happens, someone was going to make another motion out there. So is there anybody? Commissioner Kleinfeld.
I would make another motion. I'd make a motion to amend the budget that we have adopted and add the budget amendment sent in from the county exec's office that is under correspondence.
That would be 8B. I have Kleinfeld, supported by Haw. So is there any discussion on that? Now, Commissioner Haw, are you still on from the last round? I have you on my list. That's what I wanted to make sure that you're, okay.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment to the amendment that I've distributed a summary of, described as the hybrid budget plan summary. It's actually a description of the amendment that Crystal is passing out. So if there is a second to my amendment, I would be happy to explain it.
We have a second to Commissioner Drollet's amendment. Commissioner Myjack,
Okay, thank you.
please explain. Thank you.
My amendment essentially allows the 99% plan to go into effect for 32 of the 38 departments. So the majority of departments, animal control, the clerk, equalization, would then operate using the 99% plan amendment that the Commissioner Kleinfeld introduced. However, it would amend the 99% plan amendment for 5 departments. Those 5 departments would be the Board of Commissioners, the Treasurer's Office, the Office of the County Executive, the Prosecuting Attorney, and Public Works. Those 5 departments would receive a 2% increase from the 2019 amended budget, rather than the 99% proposal. The reasons for this amendment are that the 99% plan, as articulated by the executive and others, allows some, I guess you could say, more flexibility within the various departments. But there's one particular budget in particular that yet still, when you average out the 99% plan, the average increase for the average department is about 2% when you average it out. Some more, some less. That's why the 99% plan exists. But there was a budget that was part of the original budget that's a 500% increase from the average. In other words, a 10.6% increase was recommended. It's not 2%. We just approved contracts for county government employees that average a 2% increase for the people that work for this county. We are told that there is a compensation study that warrants increasing one particular budget 10.6%. But we have not seen this compensation study. It has not been provided to us. On top of that, even if there is a compensation study that supports that claim, it doesn't support the growth in that department, the number of deputy executives, the number of personnel that have been added. The charter calls for 1 deputy executive, for example. There are a number of them. I think that if we pass a budget that expects every department to make decisions that may potentially involve not filling vacancies or other tough decisions, so we can have a responsible budget that averages a 2% increase, I think that's the expectation we should have for the departments that represent elected officials. I think it's only fair and equitable that that we as a board receive a 2% increase, that the county executive department receive a 2% increase, the treasurer, public works, and also the prosecuting attorney. There's a few other points that I think it helps address that are a little bit more minor. For example, the 99% plan addresses the entire public works budget, not the portion that's general fund. So whereas the 2% plan was specifically developed to only address the general fund portion. So this hybrid plan, or as I call it, the hybrid amendment, I guess it's to be referred to, would address only the general fund portion of the Public Works Department budget, as I think is appropriate, rather than throwing in the money they get from mid and the other drain districts and so forth. So again, I know that we want to keep top people in this county. I think that's very important. But that sometimes means we have to make tough choices and lead by example, and not have a department that creates the proposed budget giving themselves 500% more, 5 times more, than what's being recommended for the average department. I think that it's appropriate that we all give equal 2% increase to these departments so it's more in line with what we are asking our employees to accept. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Hall?
Thank you, Chairman. He keeps going green, red, and I'm not even touching it, so just so you know. And I have a witness here that...
I have you on the list.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate my colleague's comments. I appreciate the work that he has put in on this budget, but we have a 99% plan that deals with some, if not most, of those issues. There was a tremendous amount. I think we had a record 29 meetings, budgetary meetings. So my question to approve his amendment would require how many votes? Is this a 2/3 vote or a simple majority?
We're at a majority at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I personally will not be supporting the amendment. Thank you. And I don't have a request to speak on here.
Thank you. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you. Well, Leon and I already had a knockdown, drag-out fight today. It was over the phone, but I hit him over the head. He kicked me in the shin. I punched him in the stomach. It went on for quite a while, and it ended up, it was a draw. I couldn't convince him of anything, and he couldn't convince me of anything. I did want to point out one of the things we discussed on the phone today is while we're sitting at the table, staff comes around and hands us stuff when it's our thing that is being proposed. And just to point out, these two things were at the table today. That's one of the things that we discussed. And I had a good idea of what you were thinking of because we had had discussions, not all this detail. Just pointing out that part of my argument today.
I did pass those out today.
Yes. So I won 1/10 of the argument with you. This is the first year since I've been on here that we have amended the county proposed budget by the county executive, and the county exec's office actually came to the table with a compromise, the 99% compromise. That hasn't happened before as long as I've been on here. And I thought that that was a good start in building a relationship in the future, that it isn't either one side wins or the other side wins, that there's a compromise. And as of a couple of weeks ago, I thought my understanding from just a couple of people that were in contact with the county exec's office that it didn't really matter to them whether it was the 2% or the 99%, they could live with either one. I voted against the 2% because Finance Director Smeagol indicated that at least one department wouldn't have any operating budget, and even though there seemed to be an agreement, I felt a little funny about it. But having said that, I thought most people were okay with the 2% or the 99%. So I was a little surprised when the 2% didn't work out, at least from their perspective, that there were individuals who were no longer happy with the 99%. I don't put Leon in that category. I don't think he was 100% happy with it from the get-go. But because there was a compromise that I thought that everybody could live with, and I also thought would avert pretty much a war and a huge controversy in the county, I'm not going to support Leon's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the work that you put in, Leon, on this, or Commissioner Drolet, or Drolet, whichever today. And the comments from the previous board members. What I'd like to do is ask our HR director, Andrew McKinney, to come up, and I'd like to talk about the proposed raises, if you would, please, because I've asked for documentation from our office to ask for your office of the class and comp study. And I know how important it was, because when the Board of Commissioners hired a company out of state to do for the elected officials, it was to be non-biased, and you guys were authorized by the board to do the same thing, a non-biased company to come in to do a study. On that, on the backups, we've seen some information, but I have not seen any information on the deputies as far as the study that was done by the outside company. And if you could enlighten the board and explain to us what that is, or if it's available to us.
Sure, and I don't usually get any requests for information until very soon before a board meeting. So the only thing that we had over and over again at the collective bargaining tables, one of the things that came up, and you just mentioned it, Commissioner Carabelli, is the elected official study that was done. And the elected official study that was done, I believe, was implemented at 100% of the recommendations except for one position. And that position was the board chair. And that position was recommended to be 100% more than what the recommendation was in the, Gallagher Bassett that did that study. So we...
I'm sorry, your reasoning for quoting that, because to be real frank with you, that was because they assumed it was a part-time position and not a full-time position. So I don't know if you were aware of that, because I don't think you were here during that study.
I wasn't, but I can tell you what they had recommended, and that's what had come of that study. Also, it was implemented at 100%.
But it was a part-time position that they had recommended. They thought it was a part-time, not a full-time job. But go ahead and continue.
And they had recommended it for 45 as opposed to the 90 where it's at now, I believe.
Correct,
So
they had a part-time position.
So the recommendations that Gallagher had made were implemented at 100%. We've been through this a number of times. Our recommendations that came in were determined not to be affordable, so we implemented those at 95. Then there was a 1% increase in 18 and a 1% increase in 19 for our general employees. The Gallagher study suggested 2% in each year, so there was a 2% for elected officials in 18, which is 100% more than our general employees got, and a 2% increase in 19, which was 100% more than our general employees got. So that was most of the discussion that started at the collective bargaining groups. We were then able to talk about hierarchy and all those other things, and they certainly understand that individuals who are superior to subordinates get a wage that is greater than subordinates. So that's basically what came of that. We've talked about that a whole bunch of times. Our groups have all been incredibly supportive of the work that we've done, and I think today you heard Kristen talk about the ability now to actually attract and retain talent. So we're happy that
first of all, I don't know where you're going with this. I'm asking just strictly about the executive's office for the deputies on the study that came back for the raises, is what I'm asking you. Because that's the contention that the commissioner brought up, and I'm asking strictly for the executive's office, the study that showed the raises.
Mm-hmm. The study was the, what was it? It was, sorry that I'm blanking on the name of the firm now that we had that came in to do that with us. Seagull Waters. So that is the study that we based our recommendations on.
I'm asking, is it, so the number that they came up with is you're recommending the number that they came up with and that's what's being requested? Or is this a step program? I'm not privy to that. I don't know if any other board members are privy to that.
May I do
Absolutely.
The point of order is very brief. I just want to clarify one thing. You said we're always late in coming and asking for this information. Before you were ever hired, this board requested the entire compensation study. When we voted to do the compensation study, we said at the table at that time, we will get a copy of it. Of course you'll get a copy. Of course you'll get a copy in its entirety. So I just want to make sure there's no misinformation out there that we're just Johnny-come-lately asking for that. That had been asked for years ago, before you were even on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and you are correct, and we have asked for it, although there's been some confusion maybe about what we were asking for several times in the last couple months for this information, and I think maybe there might be a little bit of a crossover, but I can tell you that I've had the staff ask a bunch of times. So maybe there's a difference in what information, and I know we received a report, but I think what Commissioner Carabelli is looking for is the backup data that actually, or the actual report showing.
Yeah, to be real frank with you, I'm the biggest cheerleader in this county to hire the best and the brightest. And I was the biggest cheerleader for the class and compensation study for making the pay right so we can have the best and the brightest and retain them here. I'm 100% in. I'm only asking for the backup material to justify my decision. So when a constituent asks me, you did this, and I can say yes, because this is the recommendation of the professionals we hired. And yet a document hasn't been provided showing us, here's the recommendation. So you went and talked about the elected officials, which I appreciate, which we followed, other than one, because they said it was a part-time position, and it's actually a full-time in this county historically from the start. So my question for you, is there backup documentation for this? Because I'm 100% on board to support it, 100% with the backup documentation. Is there documentation?
There is documentation. Also, the report is available online at our website, so you're welcome to go to the report on our website.
For those
Yes,
positions?
it's been online since the beginning, sorry.
Pardon?
It's been online since it was issued, so.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hall. Oh, you're on the second round. I'm going to go with Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is, if I may, to Commissioner Drellett. I received this just from staff about maybe 20 minutes ago. This chart here, are these the actual numbers in the hybrid plan that we're talking about here?
Yes, I asked Crystal to please plug in what the budget amendment would be, how it would be reflected. So these are the actual numbers, Crystal, that were distributed for the hybrid, for the amendment.
Okay, the only concern I have is when I look at this thing too, which is a memo from you.
Yes.
It indicates that 32 of the 38 departments would be affected by your so-called hybrid amendment. On this here, I see 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, shouldn't there be 2 more numbers reflected in this chart?
Well, I came up with the number of 32 out of 38 by counting the number of departments that were identified in the 99% plan originally, and then deducting essentially the 5, and then the sheriff is 99.5% under both plans, or under the. It's different
Okay.
from our 2% plan. The sheriff is because this 99% plan cuts $450,000 from the sheriff. So it would be the 5 departments identified and the sheriff.
Okay. Now, if I'm to understand this correctly with this chart here, with regard to your amendment, you're actually giving certain departments more money, and you're
Yeah.
only taking away from one department in particular.
Yes, and the 4 departments that are being affected with more money are, 1, our board office, which is recommended under the executive to get 0% increase. So we'd be taking away 1% from 0. We'd be -1. So my budget amendment would amend that to give us 2% increase. Also, the Public Works Department, because the way the 99% plan is calculated, it includes the mid money and the other money. It results in a $78,000 approximately decrease to the Public Works Department. That I don't think is. I think it's it's a mistake in the 99% plan as it's crafted. So it would provide that. With regard to the treasurer, it's pretty much a wash. It's like $1,500 different. And so with those other, and with the sheriff, it's going to be, the 99% plan is a $450,000 decrease that we'd be accepting under accepting the recommendation. So yes, it would be, the Office of the County Executive would be the primary department losing money under this proposal, and that's because it's the only department that asked for a 10.6% increase.
Okay.
I mean, everybody else was well below that.
Yeah, I'm going to, what I'm going to say, some people have expressed some of their views on it. Let me give an overall perspective for everybody that's in this room. As indicated by Commissioner Haw, this board indicated early on in the season that we had some goals. The goals were to spend less than what we bring in, and we've done that. We've done that with the 2% plan that currently is really the budget that was passed. Unfortunately, as has been brought to our attention by the executive and by members of different departments, the 2% plan has some unintended consequences. And that's probably a direct result of the collective bargaining that's been going on, as well as the efforts by Mr. McKinnon in all the negotiations. So obviously, when you want to spend less than what you bring in, and you have collective bargaining agreements, and you have negotiations going on for wages, it's going to create these unintended consequences, which I think this board does not want to have happen. I'm pretty sure everybody here universally agrees like that. The executives come up with a plan known as the 99% plan that, in his opinion, will potentially smooth over some of these unintended consequences. Commissioner Drollet, who's been astute throughout this entire process at looking at the numbers and trying to accomplish the overall goal, which we do with no matter what happens here today. The overall goal of this board has been achieved. We're spending less than what we've taken in, and we're putting some money back into fund balance. And a little history behind that comes from Commissioner Brown, Commissioner Sauger, and Commissioner Myjack. And from what finance has been telling us, in a couple years we're going to have a recession. And when we had recession back in 2008, we went through what was known as the fund balance. And we went through that like that, from what I understand. And we're running at about 20% of our operating expenses at fund balance. If we get hit with another recession, we're going to likely go through that pretty quickly. And mark my words, from what I understand from my colleagues who've been here for a while, there will be layoffs. So this board isn't trying to save money just to make it like a cool thing to do. This board is trying to save money and keep that fund balance up so that when the hard times come, we don't have to have tough layoffs. We don't have to make tough decisions. And hopefully the economy won't go south. With respect to this amendment, I will say this. It pretty much gives an increase to every department except for one. It actually decreases a certain department. Now, one thing we've said time and time again is we don't want to micromanage.
It actually increases the Office of County Executive by 2%.
It increases by 2%, but it's less than what the county executive is recommending.
Of course.
Right.
10.6.
Correct. One thing that we've always said is we're not going to micromanage. Okay? We're not going to micromanage departments. We're going to kind of say, hey, look, here's the money. Spend it as you see fit. Obviously, if you get a little bit less money, it's tough, and we don't want that to happen, but we trust our department heads. In this case here, if one particular department is getting a 10.6 increase, if they want to spend it the way they want to spend it, they have to answer for that. They have to look at people and say, this is how we spent our money. This is why we spent our money. So it's a tough call. I certainly appreciate the amendment, and I certainly appreciate the concern. The question is, are we micromanaging? And moreover, keep in mind, how these department heads spend their money are going to have to be accounted for by everybody. The citizens, the other department heads that may feel shorted, everybody. So that's a decision that ultimately might not be ours to make if we achieve our goals, which are to save money and put money in the fund account balance. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I have, you were on the first round already, though, so I'm going to have Commissioner Haw on the second round.
Thank you again, Mr.
First and
Chair.
second round.
Second round. Thank you for being first in the second. What I forgot to mention is this is my first budget as a commissioner. I've probably worked on 50 to 100 budgets through General Motors in the state of Michigan. There are a tremendous amount of inputs. There's a tremendous amount of back and forth. We use continuous improvement and lessons learned at General Motors for years. Not that they're doing everything perfect, but it's annually we go through that review, and I'm suggesting to the chairman, we do the same thing when this process is done. As I said earlier, I'm not pointing fingers in any direction, but there is none without sin in this process, as we have tried to evolve to simplifying it to get to where we are today. And one thing I would like to do is, we've heard Leon's proposal and his explanation. We haven't heard from the deputy executive out there on what he sees the proposal doing, which is what we tried to do on numerous occasions in meetings, so that we at least left the room with not an agreement, with a understanding of where the sides were. And again, 29 different meetings in hours and hours, hundreds of hours probably, in conversations, and now we've got another amendment. So I personally, if there's not any objection, would like to hear from the deputy director, deputy executive, on where they feel this would land. So if you don't have any objections, I'd like Mark Delvin to give us his explanation of what he sees. He's back there with the other crew.
Would you like me to say no?
You don't get the... Thanks, Chairman.
I'm sitting back with the people that do all the work, that make everyone in this up here at the podium look good and make our office look good. We don't do the work in the executive's office, but we try to surround ourselves with some of the best talented people. And that was one of the reasons that you supported. We convinced you to support a classification and compensation study a couple of years ago, just as you did for yourselves. Let me just quickly summarize. I'm really, really disappointed, but a couple of commissioners here have finally revealed their true colors. That after 20-some budget meetings, after hours and hours of meeting, it is all coming down to one department, one office, and that's the Office of County Executive. But I'm not surprised. To Commissioner Drolet, who many of you have complimented because he took the lead in trying to find a way to work with us to balance the budget for this year, because $1.7 million overspending was unacceptable to some of you. I've said it to some of you, I'll say it again. This is the leanest budget the county executive has submitted to the Board of Commissioners in 9 years. We said no to many department heads and elected officials who are requesting additional support. We said we are not building any new positions that have to be supported by the general fund, and we didn't. Let me just turn back the clock to 1 year ago this month. You adopted the county executive's 2019 budget with no amendments made to it that was overspending by $8.6 million. And we kept telling you, a lot of it has to do with capital projects. But you did it. Well, I don't know if it was unanimous, it passed. What's happened a year later? It's unacceptable now to all of a sudden pass a budget that was going to overspend $1.7 million. Steve Smeagol from Finance told this board a couple of weeks ago, when asked, where do we think we're going to end 2019? And because we couldn't get all our capital projects done, and because the department heads and union people in this room they've made many sacrifices, and we don't want to go back and live what they did 10 years ago. We're going to break even this year. That's $8.6 million to the better. And we have come in under budget every single year, every budget that has been passed since the executive has been here. The only thing that's changed between a year ago and right now is there was a classification and compensation study. Some board members are not happy with the outcome, and it's a way to get to the executive. That is what this is all about. Leon led the charge. Mark, will you and the executive meet with me and others? Let's try to find a way to zero out the budget so we can eliminate the 1.7. Absolutely. We had one meeting. We said, we've been talking for 2 years about bonding for capital projects. Take some of the biggest, most pressing projects, roll it up into a $12 or $15 million bond, and that's going to free $5 million out of the budget that you approved 2 weeks ago. Everybody in that, well, it seemed that we left that meeting with Executive Hackle, and everybody was pretty happy. We found a way to zero out the budget. But no, that was not good enough for some of you. We met again. We said, all right, you don't want to consider capital projects? We are confident that if you take 1% away from every department that we recommended, we're going to save $1.8 million, more than the 1.7. But no, that wasn't good enough. And it all comes down to this. After just hearing about Commissioner Drolet's proposal, and I haven't seen it, you just got it, I got to weigh in. I'm really, really disappointed. But some of you have shown your true colors because you honed right in on what the problem's been up here for the last 3 months. You're ticked off about the results of the class and compensation study, and you're trying to do something about it. That's all I have to say.
Commissioner Carabelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the HR Director, Mr. McCann, come up again, another question. Crystal just gave me what was online, and the information that I'd asked for is not online, just so you know. And those positions, I do see the information provided to the Board of Commissioners. I do see the range of the deputy executives.
Okay.
And I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm asking because I haven't seen the backup material. And I know from firsthand on the one that the board did for the elected officials, I believe Kent and Oakland, Wayne, outstate counties, to get a good idea of what the wages should be. So I'm asking, what was because I don't have the study and it's not online, what were the comparisons that we're using? And again, let me make this really clear. I want to have the best and brightest. And if this is what it is, I have no problem supporting it. But I need the documentation to say, this is what it is and this is why we came up with it. And we haven't been provided that yet. So I'm asking you, who were the comparisons that were used for these numbers?
Yeah, again, it's online. There's a 252-page document. I just pulled it up on this computer here. I don't know, I've never used this computer before, but it's on our website. There's a 252-page document that shows who the comparables are. It's under classification study, then there's overview, presentations, and frequently asked questions. And with Commissioner Kleinfeld, you had said that you were looking for that information. That is published here. I don't know that it's exactly what was asked for. This was also before I came on board.
Shared a
Yeah.
couple of years ago, thank you.
It's been up there since I got here.
Yes, but it wasn't shared that it was up there. I didn't know that it was up there.
I don't want to take credit for it. It wasn't me. I don't know who put it up there, but it wasn't me.
So anyways, who are the comparables that you're using?
They're in the classification compensation study.
I don't have anything to get online right now, so I'm asking.
And I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to go and grab that information.
We can take it, listen, I'd be happy to take a recess, to be honest with you, because it just,
Recess. We need things in writing. I'm so sick of getting things handed on my desk without proper documentation to ask him to make a decision on. So if he wants to provide some documentation for it, that'd be good, but
Commissioner Drolet, Commissioner Duge, first round.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, I agree with my colleague about getting an amendment of this nature given to me at the last minute while we're sitting here. I don't like it, and I discount it offhand. I wasn't here last Wednesday when we were discussing a whole lot of this. The 99% plan is reasonable. It's come up with people that will stand behind it and implement it. And I don't want to tie their hands in doing what they have to do for the county. Whether or not there's a recession or a depression or anything else, and next year or the year after, I guess we'll all see what happens. I have yet to see anybody that's been accurate in saying that this is how it's going to go one way or another. But I cannot support the hybrid plan. The original plan was chopping people like it was going out of style. And that's not fair to the employees that we have here in Macomb County and employees that I'm very, very proud of, not only for the job they do, but for the help and working with them. That being said, I can't support the hybrid plan. I will support the 99% plan because I think it's comprehensive, and I think it's the right thing to do. There may be discussions about who agrees with what on all this, and that's fine, because we can agree to disagree. But I think this is comprehensive, and a county exec's department is going to implement it to the best of their abilities. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Majek, did you withdraw?
Yeah, for right now.
Okay. Commissioner Drollet on the second round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to address a couple of the comments and concerns made by some of the more recent speakers. With regard to micromanaging departments, we give a dollar amount to every department. I don't think this is any different. We're giving a dollar amount to the Civil Service Commission, we're giving a dollar amount to Corporation Council, we're giving a dollar amount to the district courts. We're not micromanaging when we give them a dollar amount. We are giving them a dollar amount and expecting them to then operate within that budget. This is no different. We're giving a 2% increase to the Office of the County Executive, and then he can manage it however he sees fit. No micromanagement whatsoever. The same that we're doing for finance and health and community services and human resources and labor relations and information technology. All of them are given a number. And then within that number, we expect folks to be able to operate. Now, I understand Mr. Deldon's concerns and points that he brought forward at the microphone. It is very difficult to address people's pay, especially people that you respect and like, and I understand that completely. Mr. Deldon is not incorrect when we talked about trying to meet the financial goals of this board and not accepting a budget that goes into deficit spending. And that was achieved with the 2% plan, and it will be achieved with this 99% plan with or without this amendment. Those were the top priorities in those conversations. However, we have as a board have to do what Mr. Deldon said that he had to do. He said that he and the Office of the County Executive had to sit down with various department heads and tell them no. That he had to tell them, no, we're not going to give you these additional staff. No, you can't have this. We're going to draw the line in the best interest of the county, and had to tell someone no. It's our job to tell other branches no when it's appropriate. And one branch is creating the budget for the entire county and decides that they're not going to say no to themselves. That's only for the other departments. That's only for the employees. That's only for the unions. No is only for them. Whose job is it when one department overreaches, when one branch overreaches, whose job it is as adults to sometimes step in and say, I'm sorry, but no. A 10.6% increase is excessive. And that we don't complain. I'm not complaining about the amount of money that the individuals are not getting paid necessarily. That's a decision that has to be made within his budget that we appropriate as the counterweighting branch that is expected by the charter and by the citizens to periodically, when we think it's appropriate, to step in and say, we have to be the ones that say no. I'm suggesting we give an increase to the county executive, not a cut, an increase equal to ours, equal to the prosecuting attorneys, equal to the treasurers, equal to public works. And if that means a vacancy won't be able to be filled, that's what it means. The class and comp study did not designate how many deputy county executives you should have, and a number have been added over the years. Doesn't say you need 5 deputy executives. The charter doesn't say you need 5 deputy executives, regardless of what the pay level is. That one department cannot be allowed to live in a financial universe outside of the one that everybody else is expected to live within. So I do feel bad about, at a personal level, but I feel I have to do what I have to do at a professional level, and that's sometimes say no. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you. Executive Dildon, I see your frustration, and I know that there are board members that came away from those discussions also extremely frustrated. My understanding is there were different perceptions as to what actually took place there and what the decisions were. I fear that if Commissioner Gillette's plan passes, we won't be negotiating together through the budget process in the future. I hope that if the 99% passes, regardless of the hard feelings that have taken place, that there still will be an openness to negotiate with the board in the next year. I would like to have early discussions about possibly getting the budget earlier. And you know, you were in one of the meetings where I made it very clear to the board as the finance director, I didn't want to go down to the last day with amendments flying. I did anything and everything I could to try to, but there were conditions kept changing away from the table. So I hope that that all this frustration we're having this year doesn't carry over into how we deal with next year's budget. That's all I am requesting. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Kleinfeld. I have one final, unless someone else jumps up here. We have met, and I'll say we, but the commissioners have met with the executive's office several times through this process. And I know Commissioner Hall met, and Commissioner Drollet, and Commissioner Kraft, and Commissioner Myjack, and you're right, there's always a difference of opinion when it comes out of these meetings on exactly what happened. But at the end of one of the meetings, before we voted on our 2% plan, there seemed to be a consensus that we could live with the 2% plan. And that's pretty much the reason it went 12-1, right? Because that was the message brought back, 12-1, or 11-1, I'm sorry. Someone was missing. That being said.
Oh, I voted against it. The 2%, I voted for.
Right, you're the one, okay? So, so the point to this is, and we pointed this out at the time. We're a board of commissioners that almost every time, and I'd say almost 100% of the time, if you come to us with something and it makes sense and you need more money in your budget, I can't remember the last time we voted no, unless we had another idea that we wanted you to check on. And that's how we proposed the 2% plan. Now everybody's willing to discuss the 99% plan, and we're also discussing an amendment to it. And we talk about micromanaging, and we talk about unfairness. I remember last year, the Board of Commissioners was going to give, maybe it was the year before, but I'm pretty sure it was last year, 20 or 50,000 more to contract services for one reason or another. And I remember a certain commissioner saying, well, we didn't give the executive that extra money. We have to be fair. And Commissioner Kleinfeld, you were the one that said, we have to be fair. And I'm just.
That was a cut to one budget, and I said if we're going to cut one, we should cut the other.
No, we gave extra money to ourselves for something with contract services. And then we were fair and we gave the same amount of extra money to the executive. And we're not unfair up here. We're not trying to be unfair. Commissioner Carabelli is looking for the backup information on the raises for the deputy executives. I know we've asked for, Crystal asked for it, I know today is a little late, but we have asked before, and we get the numbers, but we haven't got the actual, what's comparable, what are the comparisons? You ask why it is the leanest budget you've brought in front of us, deputy executive, in all the time. The reason that we're looking at doing what we're doing this year is this. We looked back at 2014 and there was a meeting and we took it and looked at it and it said we're going to need $91 million over the next 5 years for capital projects. And then after that, we're going to probably need to pull $3 to $4 million out of the budget a year after that. Well, after 2019, we had spent with our, I'm not saying on your own, but total we had spent $137 million. And the next few years, we're looking at 26 more million. And then we're looking at, as Steve, the finance director Schmiegel said, and we're looking at 10 to 12 million a year out of the budget for capital projects a year after that. So you ask why this year is different. I think finally everybody said, man, we need to put, as Commissioner Drolet said, we don't need to put the brakes on, but we need to take our foot off the accelerator. So that's why this year was different, I think, than a lot of other years. I will say that whatever plan passes here, we are always willing to sit there and listen to your department come to us and tell us why you need a budget amendment. And if one person out there can tell us why, or whatever, that you came to us and asked for a budget amendment and we said no, please come up and tell us. I don't have any other speakers, and we have a motion for Commissioner Drolet's amendment. Commissioner Sauger.
I just want to make one comment, take 10 seconds. I'm with the 99%. Let's get it over with and vote on it. Thank you.
I like the way you, oh, crap, almost. Commissioner Caramelli, did you find it?
Not yet.
Okay. No. Again, let's just say this passes, we are always able to amend a budget. If it doesn't pass, we have a 99% plan in place. I don't have any other speakers. Commissioner Sauger? Commissioner Leonetti? All right.
Call my son in here.
All right, we are voting on the amendment. The Drolet amendment, yes, thank you. Please vote.
Just waiting on a couple more votes, Chair. The motion is tied 6-6.
All right, motion fails. Now we go to the amendment for the 99% plan, unless there are any other amendments out there that I didn't hear about. Any speakers on that? I'm sorry, what? I don't see you. Go ahead. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
I have to respond to what you said because it
Can
makes
we
absolutely.
respond to new business?
You just put something out there, people might all get up and walk out, and you just put it out there that because we may have been increasing ours for a particular thing, that I said, well, if we're doing that, then we must increase the county executives randomly. There's no way in the world I would ever do something like that. So if you could find that tape and give me the date, I'd really appreciate it, especially since I have not had a very great working relationship with the county exec's office. Why on earth would I do such a silly thing? Don't anybody believe what he just said. Thank you.
All right, well, we will find that. Commissioner Drolet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to say that I'm about to vote yes on this 99% plan proposal. It does meet the objectives that we established as a board early on. And, actually goes a little bit better than the 2% plan as a bottom line. So I'm very proud of the board and the work that was done to get us to the point where we can have a balanced budget instead of a deficit budget. I think a lot of people on this board did a lot of good work, especially our staff, but, members of the board did a lot of good work to get us to this point. I also like to address the concern by Mr. Delden that in some capacity there was an agenda behind the amendment that I proposed. And the agenda is simply, as I stated, if we aren't the ones to be able to say no to a particular department, or then who is supposed to do that? So it is not an agenda against the executive. I understand it's hard from that perspective to believe that to be the case, but it absolutely never has been and never will be. If I offer an amendment, it's going to be a policy-based amendment. It's not going to be out to get somebody or diminish somebody or show disrespect. It's going to be because I believe it's the right thing to do for the county. So, again, I understand how it can be perceived by some people in certain positions, that I had some sort of hidden agenda that was really to undermine somebody or get somebody. That absolutely was never the case. And I just wanted to emphasize that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Leonetti.
I will echo what Commissioner Drollet says. There's no doubt that he's worked on this extensively for the last 2 months, and he's tried every way he can to meet the accomplishments of the goals that was set by this commission. Nothing in it was personal at all, not one thing. Leon has a certain philosophy, and at times I agree with him, and at times I disagree with him. But the overall goal here was achieved with the 99% plan, which was to save money. I will also indicate that in the discussions here that were today, certain things were highlighted. Those are questions that may be asked at the next budget session. This time here, it's a little complicated because, as indicated, we did have some issues with wages this year and compensation. But I think some issues were addressed, and I think some people are going to take a look at some things. So I do want to emphasize what Commissioner Drollet says. Nothing in any of these things has been personal. This is strictly professional, strictly business, strictly looking at the numbers and trying to achieve an overall goal. So how the money is spent, that can be scrutinized at a later date. Thank you.
Commissioner Majek.
Yeah, so for me, the way I look at that is I'm looking at the big picture here, as I'll echo again. It was very eye-opening for me to see the numbers that Mr. Schmiegel came up with. For 2021 and 2022, the numbers do not look good here, even with issuing new debt of the bonds. 6.9 million in deficit for 2021, 11.2 million in 2022, and I think, at least for me, I can only speak for myself, when I saw those numbers, I think that's, in talking with some of my colleagues here, that's when we came up with plans. Drollet's plan, I had a plan also, was to try and mitigate potentially the dip or the bad times coming up. And I think it's responsible for us to do this now to the employees and to our residents to look at that. So going forward, this will pass. But what needs to be done is we need to have leadership in the county, in the executive's office, the Board of Commissioners, department heads, labor leaders here in representing the unions here, to start early next year to look at this, to look at how we're going to deal with this. No one wants to have layoffs. We don't want to have layoffs at all, and we didn't have any layoffs 10 years ago. But I fear that we have not built up a good safety net now to deal with this. 10 years ago, it seemed that we had a safety net to deal with what happened during the Great Recession and the loss of revenues. So I fear that going forward, but we can't do things at the last minute in December, November, and some of the labor leaders knew what was going on, some didn't know what was going on. They're hearing things that weren't factual. So I think we need to sit down and plan that out and look at what the forecast is going forward, okay? Because, we're talking big money. I'm hearing the discussion and the debate about this budget. Yes, it's important and everything, but we have a lot of money to deal with in the next couple years. Okay, so those are my comments. We'll get this passed, and Merry Christmas to everyone. So, okay?
We got to get it passed first.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Chair, after this vote and the announcement on this vote, could we have an announcement on the other one? Because we didn't see it, and I don't know how anybody voted, and I would like to know. Thank you.
Come out on the, okay.
I could read the previous vote if you'd like, Chair.
That'd be fine. Okay.
The motion was a tie. Those voting no were Commissioner Duje, Sauger, Kleinfeld, Brown, Leonetti, and Hall.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other speakers here. I will say that, Leon, through the whole thing that I've been talking to you, when we did this 2% plan, everybody was coming down to 2%, and that didn't seem to be an attack on anybody. I've never heard you once call out anybody and say, this is my plan. It never appeared to anybody that was working with you the whole time that it was. And I'll just say that there's, to everybody here that thinks that we should always get along, we're a legislative body, and the legislative body and the other bodies have natural friction. And we make a vote, we're done with it, and we should be moving on. And it isn't personal. So, Leon, I don't see for one second, on our side of it, and I'll tell you that most of the people that I know that you worked with never thought for one second that this was personal. Are these new on here, Mike, or any new speakers? No. Okay, good. All right. That being said, please vote. This is on the 99% plan.
Just for reference, the motion was made by Commissioner Kleinfeld, supported by Commissioner Carabelli. The motion passes 11-1 with Commissioner Kraft voting no.
Thank you. Item number 10, new business. Any commissioners with new business? Commissioner Drillnet, any commissioners with new business? I don't see any commissioners with new business. 11, public participation. Any members of the public wishing to speak? Any members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing no members of the public wishing to speak, we'll close public participation. Motion to adjourn. Commissioner Kraft, supported by Commissioner Hall. Merry Christmas, everybody.